Meeting to order. First thing we'll do is turn it over to Stefan. He has some procedures for city virtual meetings that he'd like to discuss.
All right, thank you. Welcome to our virtual meeting. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. Members of the commission, if you're able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration for the meeting. Staff, if you're able, please activate your video when you're speaking. The chair, clerk, and tech facilitator are responsible for muting and unmuting commission members. Please use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote. Staff, please use the raise hand feature when you're asked a question. The chair will do their best to call on commission members in the order in which hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the commission, please send it to the email listed on today's agenda. Chair Goodhart, the floor is back to you.
Okay, thank you, Stefan. First order of business here would be, or the next order of business would be for the approval of minutes. Is there a motion for approval of minutes? A raising, I see Alder Abbas. Is that a motion? Craig, is that a second? Okay. Seeing no objections, we approve the minutes for January 13th. I did not see any general public comment registrants, so we'll move on to disclosures and recusals. Are there any disclosures or recusals tonight? No, seeing none. Then we'll move on to the agenda overview. Janine.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. There are 6 items on this evening's agenda. That includes the public comment that we've already covered. Under public hearing items, we have 7401, 7417 Old Sauk Road. This is a signage variance. There's a zoning staff report in your packet, and staff is supporting this and recommending it for consent if the commission agrees. Item number 3 under public hearing items is 4725 Tradewinds Parkway and 3624 Galleon Run. This is new construction in Urban Design District number 1. There's a staff report in your packet, and this item does not need to go to Plan Commission. They're requesting initial final approval. Under unfinished business, item number 4 is 223 South Pinckney Street. This is an amended plan development, GDP SIP. They're requesting initial final approval. Now, the Urban Design Commission saw this on November 4th for an informational presentation. The Plan Commission is scheduled to review this on February 8th and Common Council on February 23rd. Staff report in your packet, and the team will tell you more about it when that item comes up. Under new business, item number 5, 7102 US Highway 1218. This is also an amended plan development, GDP SIP. Final approval is requested. This is scheduled to go to Plan Commission on February 8th and Common Council on February 23rd. Staff is recommending this one for consent as well if the commission does not have any questions. Then the last item, number 6, is 6003 through 6067 Gemini Drive. This is a minor alteration to an approved plan development. The commission granted final approval on this development back in September of last year. This is back for an alteration now, which includes some site improvements and materials. All of that's outlined in the staff report, and this was referred to the commission by the planning director for an advisory recommendation. And that's all for this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Janine. So first of all, are there any nominations for the consent agenda? Rafiq, let me unmute you. Okay.
I don't have a nomination for the consent agenda, but I was trying to get a recusal in, but it wouldn't let me, but I need to recuse myself from number 6.
Okay. If you would note that, Janine, thank you.
Chair, sorry to interrupt. It looks like we do have a late registrant for public comment, Dennis Zitnak. wishing to speak?
For general public comment? No.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's correct. It looks like they're not on with us, though. I didn't know if that needed to be read into the record or anything.
Well, it's on the record now. And if you would let us know if he appears, then we'll listen to the comment at an appropriate time.
Okay, will do. Thanks.
All right. Tom.
Yeah, I would move item 2 for consent. I had a question on 5. Maybe it can be quickly answered, and then I could move that as well. I just wanted to know, one of the diagrams showed the final grading appeared to look like a pyramid. It came to a point. I assume that it would be modified to look like a natural hill, and I don't know if anybody can address that. But if the final grade is not that,
I was hoping it would be razor sharp.
well, that's what it looks like in the drawing.
And glossy.
Staff does not have an answer to that question. So with that, perhaps we can bring up the question when the item comes up.
Okay, well,
Okay.
then I'll just move 2 at this point.
All right. Christian, is that a second for item number 2?
It is. I also have a question on the landfill project, so I would prefer that not go to consent, but number
Okay.
2 would be good.
All right. So that is a motion and a second for item number 2. Seeing no other hands raised, by unanimous consent, item number 2 is approved. So that will bring us then to item number 3, 4725 Tradewinds Parkway.
The team members registered to speak for item number 3 include Gary Blazek, Mark Membrino, and Robert Borrell.
Okay, anytime you're ready.
Can you hear me? This is Mark Membrino.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
All right, great. Good afternoon. I'm with Marshall Park Investments, and I'm going to kick off our presentation for 4025 Tradewinds Parkway. Next slide, please. Marshall Park Investments, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present a project for the construction of a 44,000 square foot Class A light industrial spec building. Our group is comprised of a well-seasoned team with vast industrial development experience in many markets across the country. The general contractor for our project is Jim Spar with the Lions Share Group. The engineer is Gary Blazek with Verbecker. Architect is Bob Burrell from Burrell Design Studio, and he'll take you through the architecture in detail. Next slide, please. Our site, 4725 Tradewinds Parkway, is a 3.5 acre lot located on the southeast corner of the Beltline and Stone Road as shown on the attached map. This area is the most desired industrial area in Madison because of its great access to highways and great supply of workers. Next slide, please. We have the same team that came before you last couple of years. This building that we're showing here is the Viking Electric building on Femrite. Next slide. And this building here is the IKM Illinois Kilgust building, which we're building on the site directly adjacent to this site. Next slide. We're going to leverage off of these past projects to build an even more beautiful state-of-the-art industrial building with the amenities that all top-tier industrial employers want. We believe that this Class A project will generate sustainable living wage jobs like the last 2 projects that I mentioned. The construction is going to include durable and efficient concrete panel construction, expansive daylighting with clerestory windows, with all the bells and whistles that everybody wants these days, the LED lighting, the ESFR, the wide bay spacing and high clear height for high volume storage, and a large truck court that'll be screened from the road. The other thing that we're doing for this, since it is a multi-tenant, it could be a multi-tenant scenario in a spec situation, is it'll be very flexible where tenants would have their own docks in this area. If there's any questions, if not, I'll be followed by Gary Blazek.
Hey, good evening, everybody. I will go through some of the site features that we have on this site. As Mark pointed out on the map, this site is adjacent to a previous site that we came before you guys with a year or so ago that's currently under construction. But this site is in compliance with all the zoning requirements, the industrial limited zoning. Stormwater management facilities on this site, I'll point out as we get to the next couple slides here, is a joint facility between the two different lots. Maybe you can just go to the next slide, please. I can describe them. So here's the site plan layout. On the top, you see 3 different basins. The stormwater for those 3 basins take care of stormwater for both the IKM site and this site as well. That's all been approved by city staff at this point and is under construction with the IKM site. The rear of this, the southern part of this lot, has got the joint access for trucks that will get to the loading docks both on this site and the IKM site. So there is easements already set up for that. The CSM is about through the approval process. It's at the city right now for final signature so we can get that recorded. The site will capture the roof drainage on this lot and bring it over to the detention basins where it will be processed through the different filter systems and released. Again, this site was already designed with the adjacent sites, so we should be all set up to take care of that. You can see on the site, we've got separate areas for the loading trucks, truck docks in the back, vehicles, employees, customers in the front there. They will not intermix. The truck dock on the back there also includes a trash enclosure, and both the docks and this trash enclosure will be screened with a Trex composite wood-looking fence with landscape on the outside, which will include some tall grasses and some canopy trees. There's a bike rack planned in the front, coming off the sidewalk on Galion Run there. And I think that really takes care of the site features that at least I wanted to bring up. We can certainly take care of any questions when we're done with this. With that, I will turn it over to Bob. He can go over the architectural portion of the project. So next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Borrell here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for seeing our project this evening, and I'll go over some overall summary, and then we'll look at some of the exterior views. So we do have a corner lot. We have a primary frontage on Tradewinds and a secondary on Galion Run. So we chose to put our office function at the corner because that's our biggest opportunity to break the facade, being an industrial building. So we ran a covered canopy around the corner, extends 110 feet across the front and 55 across on Galion. We've brought in natural light throughout the entire manufacturing facility with 34 upper clerestory windows. They're 21 feet off of the floor. Using a combination of materials, precast concrete, it's a sandwich panel, a highly efficient sandwich insulated panel, aluminum window system, a modular stone veneer masonry. The canopy is all exposed steel structural support, and then a deep rib at 7/8 of an inch deep horizontal metal in a zinc color wall panel, and then a fairly bold color scheme for the precast. The office area's got, we've maximized the glass, but it is still within the precast material. And we've layered the building horizontally with color and material to minimize the overall mass, and really stuck with a more contemporary, timeless style. If you can go to the next slide, please. Here's the overall floor plan. It's 8% office, about 3,800 square feet, and then 40,000 square feet of manufacturing, the office being in that upper northeast corner. Next slide, please. Our exterior elevations show the top one is on Galleon Run. That's our secondary front. So the office is toward the right side. Then our second elevation here is one of the other side on the west elevation. And we'll get into that more into 3D. And then we have our front elevation and our loading dock. There's 4 drive-up loading docks and 2 drive-in doors. Next slide, please. So this would be the southwest corner, looking at, this is the more service end with the loading docks, the service doors, and you can see off to the far left, there's a wing wall. We've got our upper clear story windows. Next slide, please. Here we are from Galleon Run on the southeast exposure. Again, loading docks, and now the building is appearing the secondary front facade. Next slide, please. Here we show the transition from the more industrial side to the office side. We've banded the clear story windows, used a color scheme that creates a solid base, transitioning to the office toward the right and the covered canopy. Next slide, please. Now we're coming around the corner. You can see the canopy with the exposed steel structure, cantilevering the canopy out there. Color scheme wraps around. Clear stories are grouped a little differently at the front. We're trying to design the building to create some degree of flexibility in the event that it may be a multi-tenant office space. Right now, the intent was the office would be concentrated on the corner. So office workers would access off of Tradewinds Parkway. Next slide, please. And now we're on the northwest corner. We have created some precast wing walls on both ends to create a termination between that front facade and the more industrial back of the building. Next slide, please. And that's the front on Galleon Run. That is a parapet wall running across the front to provide screening for mechanical units on the rooftop, which would be set back from the front of the building. So at this point, any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from our commissioners? Shane?
Hi, thanks for the presentation. I have a couple site and landscape comments. I think first, I believe you answered my question already about why the driveway kind of enters 2/3 of the way through the parking lot and splits the parking lot into 2 separate zones. Seems like that might be a public versus private parking situation, but after I'm done here, maybe you can just verify that for me. But also on the subject of parking, I think those ADA stalls should be slid over to be directly in front of the main entry. So down more towards the bottom and plan view here, or the northeast corner of the building. And then the renderings and some of the elevations of the building depict a series of trees, especially along the east and west elevations in those facades. And they really help to kind of break down the mass of the building. They seem to play off of some of the articulation of the building, but they're not in the planting plan. So I like what I see in the perspectives and the elevations, and think you should add some of the plant material. There's also a tree, I think, depicted at the northwest corner of the building to anchor that corner of the building that's not in the planting plan as well. Yeah, right there. So it would be good to see some of those trees layered into the planting plan. I think that's probably like a total of another 8 or 9 trees. The ones on the east and west probably have to be fairly upright to fit within those spaces. But that is all for me.
Okay, but you did have a question about...
Yeah, just to
site
verify
access.
that driveway wouldn't make more sense to just kind of come in at an end, so you don't have this decision point and do I go left or do I go right? Maybe you can just explain for me, is that intentional?
Yeah, this is Gary. No, I don't believe it was really intentional. It was just what we had put together. We put the handicap stalls, right in line with that entrance there, but certainly we can slide them down with the main entrance of the building. That makes sense. But as far as the driveway location, we wanted to keep away from Galion Run. Certainly, if it would make more sense to shift it over a little farther to the west, we could probably do that without a problem. And as far as the trees and the landscaping, certainly the landscaping plan we have is what we had proposed. The renderings are what Bob created for aesthetics, but we can certainly move some of our proposed plants around a little bit to try and break up the building as you had suggested. I think that's a good idea.
So regarding the driveway, I think you might actually gain a stall or two or efficiency or planting if you're able to move it a little west or plan north here. So something to look at. I would
just come in off the end. Just come in off the end there, you're thinking?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Okay.
So I would recommend exploring that. I would definitely require that the ADA stalls get moved closer to the door.
Sure.
And then the plantings, I mean, I don't think you need to pull out any of the plantings. I would like to maybe just see additional plantings, specifically on that west side. It's a little bare around the bioretention and the building facade.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Lois?
Yeah, I have a question about the parapets. What is the function of having the parapets on the two sides of the building and then they kind of stop?
Yes, this is Bob Borrell. This is a large roof area with a lot of water area. We're trying to direct the water to the two ends. They'll be picked up by downspouts that will be directed into subsurface drainage that goes into the retention areas. And so that's a slope roof, and it is going to the two ends. The parapets, I think they aesthetically clean up the ends so you don't see that pitch roof, which always is more indicative of a industrial building. So having the parapet, it cleans up the ends, and it does help screen mechanical equipment.
Okay. Yeah, I wondered about the mechanics. They seem a little thin, and especially seeing them on end. Is the material wrapping around, and are you finishing the inside as well? Or are you going to start seeing roofing material coming up? And I could see some.
Sure, we can certainly wrap. Yeah, we can certainly wrap the material around. There will be a step flashing along the roof area, but we can wrap it around. We could also double up the wall thickness and wrap it, wrap that material around, so it's more integral to the facade. That would not be a problem.
Okay. Yeah, I think they kind of just have a wing-like appearance. So I'm not as opposed to them, but I do want you to pay attention to the materials on the inside. And then the fins that you have coming off to at your change of materials, how come that doesn't go all the way up? Right at the top of that fin, you have a change of materials without that fin interrupting them.
Well, that's a good question. during the design process, we looked at various different terminations, and pulling the fin up is absolutely doable, and probably would make some sense too. So that's a very valid comment.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if it needs to be quite as, it also seems very narrow, delicate. I'm wondering if maybe the proportion of it doesn't need to come out quite as far as you have it shown.
You mean in terms of the depth?
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be looked at.
Yeah.
There's nothing magic about it. So,
yeah, I think I have it, obviously come past the canopy, but I do think it comes out a little too far for such a delicate feature.
Sure. Yeah, that could be pulled in.
Okay. That's all I had. And I was just going to also mention the handicap parking. I think what I was concerned about with the handicap parking was that they were at the end of that entrance drive. So just, I know you're going to move the handicap spots, just make sure they're not at the end of that entrance drive. I think that backing up would be kind of difficult for folks.
Sure.
With that entrance coming right behind them.
No problem.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you, Lois. I think if I recall in the presentation somewhere, there was an image of the parapet returning. Like you suggested, it might have been an existing building somewhere else, but certainly that was an effective way to deal with that parapet transition. Okay, next is Craig.
Thanks, Cliff. If you could go back to that same slide that Lois was commenting, I have a couple more comments to kind of follow up on that office view. And maybe the previous slide you had just before that elevation. So with that wing wall, understand where your downspouts, where you're addressing along that, but there is no downspouts in the office side. Is that intentional? Downspouts is one of these things where you plan all you want, but then when you get down to the brass tacks of the devil in the details, and you end up having one in the wrong spot. So I'm wondering if that's truly shown as is, where they're downspouts only on we'll say the away from the office area, or over that canopy there would be some downspouts coming down.
Yeah, the canopy, the volume of water is not that significant. So we're just really just dumping it off the edge at this point, and then it's picked up, through surface runoff. It's not that large of a surface area.
And from the high roof between the wing wall and the office, there is no downspouts coming down. Is that correct as well?
Correct. That water is all collected and directed to one of the major downspouts past the wing wall.
Yep. Okay. Perfect. That's why I just wanted to verify that was intentional. I understand you have to have them once you get back, and I think you did the best you can with downspouts. That's always and you're showing them. I'm guessing they're being pretty substantial downspouts.
They will be, and we are using an accent color just to again help create a little more break in the facade.
Do you know the size of your gutter? Is that going to be like a 12-inch?
It will have to calculate that. It's going to be very massive.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all I had.
Okay. Thank you. Just one thing I wanted to note is that the perspectives in the submitted plans are different than what we're seeing in the presentation, and the official submittal, I think, would be what you would be we would be approving, and that shows a substantial return on the parapet. So I don't know if the commissioners have that at their disposal, but that's what was submitted. There also is a staff report that listed some other things that the staff would like us to pay attention to. I think one was the screening material for the dumpster, some equipment locations, and other comments for us to keep in mind. I know from my perspective, I would think since we have a lot of metal panel on the building, it seems like a metal panel would be an appropriate, maybe a more appropriate screening material for the dumpster enclosure than a Trex wood look material. Shane.
I agree with you, Cliff. I'm just wondering if that is in the submittal. Do we know what the material proposed is for the trash and dumpster enclosure?
Well, on the site plan that I saw, it said wood fence. And then during the presentation, it was clarified that it would be a Trex, but the appearance sounds like is a wood look, but probably Trex for durability.
You're right. A lower maintenance, durable material is what we're thinking there.
Yeah, I was thinking Trex, a Trex product.
Is that a product that's used anywhere else, or would you be opposed to, like Cliff suggested, a metal panel?
Oh, not at all. I think the metal panel is a more industrial look. The Trex is a little bit warmer with landscaping. I think it's in the eye of the beholder. I think the Trex would be a little warmer, softer touch because it does have the wood look with plantings in front of it. But we're certainly willing to go either way. My preference would be a Trex material.
Chair, could staff make a request?
Yes, please.
So on the discussion of metal panel that is on the building, as part of the final motion, when there is one, staff would like to request that there is a finding that metal panel is acceptable as a large portion of the exterior material, or it is not.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. So in addition to that item and the materials on the dumpster enclosure, I heard there was some discussion about adding trees and moving the accessible stalls and shifting the main driveway curb cut. Is there a motion that would memorialize these requests from our commission? Make them on the record. Help the applicant move along. Lois?
I'll make a motion for final approval with the changing the fence material to something similar to the materials on the building for continuity. Also to add those trees that are in the rendering into the landscape plan, to move the drive. I don't know which direction it was. Was it north?
West.
West. And to relocate the handicap stalls closer to the main entrance. I feel that the material is appropriate for the location of this building and its use.
Okay, thank you. And since you brought up the issue of the parapet, if you have the ability, you can see what the official in the plans in Legistar, where it says the plans and not the presentation, you have the ability to see what the return on that parapet would look like. It goes back, I think, a bay. Shane. Oh, there you go.
There we go. I was going to second that. I just wanted to also draw attention to the parapet and that, Lois, I didn't know if there was anything about the fins and the depth of the fins.
I think they already mentioned that they could shorten them not sure how to, I guess, make them look less, have them come out less, not as far as you have them.
Okay, so
I don't know exactly how to say that with, doesn't have to be a certain dimension.
So just to reduce the depth of the fin on both sides?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think, which document? I have that document open, Cliff, the plans, not the presentation.
Yeah, it would say, not the presentation, but it would be the full plan set. So that has a lot more drawings in it. But if you scroll down to the renderings, you can, it's like page 36 of 59.
Oh yeah, I see. You have they have the parapet returning, but it's not going all the way to the fin. It's just kind of returning. I don't like that though. It doesn't, I'm not sure why because in the back, it doesn't have it returning.
Right. Well, that's what was submitted.
Yeah, we originally started with that, and then our builder weighed in and said that it's almost impossible to properly flash that because all of this volume of roof water is coming right at the parapet. If it's a flat roof, with internal drains, they're easy to do, but he highly recommended against it.
Okay.
So we eliminated it.
Okay.
All right. So, all right. Is your motion with the
not returning the
with not returning as shown in the presentation drawings acceptable?
Correct.
Okay. And that was seconded by Shane.
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, I see no hands raised. I don't see anyone opposing. If there is an opposition, raise your hand. Otherwise, by unanimous consent with the finding made and the comments and the conditions, you have final approval. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us now to unfinished business agenda item number 4, 223 South Pinckney Street.
The development team registered to speak includes Aaron Ebent and Nate Gundrum. Susan Vincent is available to answer questions. And I do believe that Alder Verveer is also present to possibly speak on this item.
All right, Alder Verveer, if you do want to speak, just raise your hand and we'll be sure to have you unmuted so you can address the commission. Otherwise, for the development team, anytime you're ready, just get started. If you could please limit your presentation to 3 minutes a person, we would greatly appreciate it.
Sure, sounds good. Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Janine. This is Nate Gundrum with Mortensen, and as Janine mentioned, with me tonight is Aaron Ebent with Kaler Slater Architects, and also available to speak is JP Beitler with the Beitler organization. So we are here tonight for both initial and final approval on the Judge Doyle Square Hotel. I did want to provide just a quick refresher to this group since it has been a few months. And Janine, if you could advance to the next slide, please. So this all glass tower is what is currently approved through Planning Commission and City Council. So, theoretically, we could just move forward and build this. However, we don't think that's the right thing to do for several reasons. First of all, we are taking this opportunity to, as you may recall, to reduce the overall height of the building. So this design that you're looking at that's currently approved includes a mechanical penthouse and an elevator overrun that exceeds the Capitol View preservation height limit. And our proposed design has reduced the overall height of the building such that we are now under the Capitol View preservation height limit, including our mechanical penthouse and elevator overrun. And then secondly, we've made what we think are some positive enhancements to the pedestrian experience, especially on the hard corners of Doty and Pinckney Street and on Pinckney and Wilson Street. We've carved away the hard edges of the building on those corners and given more real estate back to the pedestrian right away to further activate, that ground floor experience through outdoor dining, outdoor event space. And then lastly, and perhaps most importantly, we wanted to be respectful of the design that's advancing across the street on the Stonehouse housing projects across Pinckney. And Janine, maybe if you could advance a slide or two, we have some, maybe one more, please. We have some images of what that housing project will look like. We want to make sure that our hotel design is complementary from an architecture and materiality perspective to our neighbor across the street. One other thing that I wanted to mention before I turn it over to Aaron is, there has been a letter that was submitted by the Capital Neighborhoods Association requesting that UDC withhold final approval tonight based on some feedback from the steering committee. I have had a chance, over the past 24 hours to speak with Eli Judge and Alder Verveer. And I believe there's just one primary concern that the steering committee has, and it's around the elevations of the end walls on Doty and Wilson. And we've provided CNI with some additional design options for those end wall elevations and are prepared to walk through those alternate schemes today with UDC, because ultimately we need to get consensus from both groups, both CNI and UDC. And so, during the public hearing, hopefully we'll hear from Eli or others from the steering committee. This has been a very productive and collaborative effort to date. We have had a chance to meet with CNI on 2 other occasions, once with the steering committee back in November and once with the full group earlier this month on January 14th. And I believe, if you've read that letter, the majority of their concerns we have been able to incorporate. And I think we're really down to this last one. So with that, I'll turn it over to Aaron Eben to get into the specifics and walk you through the updates that we've made since we last met with the commission in November. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is Aaron Eben with Kaler Slater. What we are showing here in this image is the initial one that we presented to this group here back before the first of the year. And what the informational feedback hearing that we got is that there was a lot of positives to this. There were no deal killers. Everybody liked the curve form, but there was some more comments about we should really lean into the curve and add more dimension to it, make it a little bit more playful and add some color. This was a little bit too corporate and restrained. And so we went back to the drawing board and took those comments to heart and really advanced it. In addition to that, as Nate mentioned, we've been working through the neighborhood meetings as well and been responsive to their feedback. So just as a refresher, that's what's there. And if you advance to the next slide, we can jump into the site plan. Actually, I think you went to, there you go. The site plan here. So Pinckney Street is running left to right on this with Wilson on the right and Doty on the left. You can see the curved form of the tower there. And this is really the ground floor interaction with the site plan. So there's a dashed line of the cantilever of that hanging over and covering a lot of that sidewalk. Within that, there's an entry canopy at the front door. So the entry canopy is located, the entry condition is located at the center of the building on the center of the curve on Pinckney. And there is a large drop off there for the queuing of cars and valet movement and still letting through traffic go. This is showing a concept for the center of the island, but I understand that that's now in the jurisdiction of the city development. The overall form of the tower is pulled back from the hard corners, as mentioned by Nate. And what we've done is we've added some decorative paving around there and created outdoor breakout spaces for the meeting room on the right-hand side and the bar and restaurant on the left. Obviously, pedestrians can go through there as much as they want as well, public can, but it really does provide a little bit of a relief, and it creates this opportunity or this window from afar as you're coming down Wilson or Doty to kind of view into this Judge Doyle Square development with the two unique curving forms of these two buildings in conversation with each other. There are street trees on Doty and edge plantings along the edges of the building as well. Bike racks are distributed throughout as well. Go to the next one. Ground floor plan really quickly. Entry at the center, meeting space and pre-function to the right, bar and restaurant and lounge to the left. We've have a lot of glass facing Pinckney Street. We've increased that based on the original submittal, based on some conversations with staff. So we've increased the amount of glass that we have there. And then we've tucked all the kind of the back of house stuff up against the future building there on the north. Go to the next one. Typical floor plans, you start to see how the split bar massing that you'll see in the 3D is evident here with the guest room corridor having glass at either end, and then the bar of guest rooms on the top, above and below that, forming the concave and the convex curve of the massing. Elevators are in the center, and then stairs are at the edges of the building so we can get out of the building from an exiting standpoint as well. The second floor does have a double height space, a fitness center, and some other back of house requirements as well. Go to the next one. This is our revised proposed hotel design, and what this does is it shows you the view down Pinckney Street with the form of the curve. Overall, we've lightened up the palette of the building from what we showed at the informational meeting, so it's a lot lighter and brighter now. With that, we'll get into the materials in a second. The curved form has been carved away a little bit more. It now has a little bit more playful. There's a nice blend of the horizontal and the vertical in there. And then we have a facade pattern to create a little playfulness within that. We've added some more articulation on the ends of the building, as shown here with a series of windows and an infill metal panel. We think there's a great opportunity for signage with a blade sign there too. This shows the plantings and the outdoor space that happens there. Go to the next one. This next one shows you the facade and the windows. So it's a pattern of alternating vertical strips of windows and solid metal panels, and with thinner horizontal floor line bands. To make the verticals and horizontal balance, we adopted a checkerboard pattern for the facade that is really a two-tone, a tone-on-tone of a lighter and a darker gray metal panel that kind of bring your eye up and keep your eye moving across the facade. So it helps break the vertical stripes down and keeps your eye moving. We think it really plays into the curve, as been commented on. You can also see the canopy, which takes kind of the opposing curve form and juts out from some stone piers on the building to cover the entry sequence as well. You can go to the next one. There's a detail at the corner showing the recess and the cantilever for the hotel tower above, the opening of the corner for the pedestrian plaza, the opportunity for some signage and some plantings along the street wall there on that facade. You can go to the next one. The material as shown is the metal panel 1 is a ribbed metal panel, and it has the ability to have various corrugation profiles that can be stacked. And so those would be stacked and we'll design a pattern, but it won't be a regular pattern of a series of, so it'll have this kind of playful texture that's horizontally striated across the facade. And that's what's metal panel 1, and we're doing that in a ascot white color. So it's a lighter and brighter color. We think that really ties into the kind of the civic nature of some of the spaces and ties into the building across the street. Metal panel 2 is black and a charcoal gray alternating within there. And that's a smooth, flat metal panel, metal composite type metal panel. And then at the base of the building, this building is built into the hill. And so we do have some exposure where there's about 6 to 8 feet of difference between Doty and Wilson. So there we have a stone base that's expressed and exposed, and some of those have legs that come up to support the floating mass above, and that's done in a honed granite. Go to the next page. The rear of the building, or the convex side of the building, if you will, we have, again, the overall metal panel 1 with the horizontal striation, but there's a big carve out of it that reveals kind of a darker vertical textured metal panel with pairs of punch windows running around there as well. The gasket between the tower and the future building, the 1 to 2 story piece there on both Wilson and Doty streets, is clad in the granite as well, with some windows in it to the bike storage. If you go to the next one, you can see the overall building elevations. And then we've dashed in the existing or the future buildings that would abut it on the short, or the Doty and Wilson elevations. The next one. Here you can see that stone base that I was talking to. Wilson Street's much lower, so that stone base is exposed there out of the hill, and you can see the Wilson Street view in there. And at that point, we'll open it up to questions unless Nate has any closing comments.
I'm good, Aaron. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Julie and Stefan, I don't see any more registered speakers unless I don't have the most up-to-date list. So I will...
I don't have any.
Okay. I'll open it up then to the commissioners for questions and comments. Shane.
Thanks. I really like the materials and some of the textures on the building that I'm seeing. I really like the honed granite base. I really like the horizontal striation at the ends, and just the color palette in general. I think there's a couple site plan and landscape things I want to call attention to. So if we could maybe, Janine, pull up the landscape plan. There's 2 planting beds flanking sort of the main central entry, yeah. And I'm not buying the blue symbol, the juniper as a ground cover. Feels like a little bit of a lost opportunity, that those could be mass plantings of something with a little bit more movement and texture instead of just a low evergreen ground cover. Something like maybe the prairie drop seed that's, I believe, elsewhere in the plan. It might be in that center island, the sort of municipal island in the middle of the street. But I think that plant could be swapped out for something more interesting and really fill those planters pack full of them. Don't let them be sort of sparse plantings flanking the really beautiful materials of the building. Likewise, there's a little sliver. So I like the corners. I like the specialty paving. Although I have a question on what that actually is that maybe you can respond to at the end of my comments here. But there, on each end, there's a triangle sliver of planting with 2 lonely little shrubs in them. And likewise, I think those could just be packed full of something else, like a low ornamental grass or some other species with just a little more interest. And then just one more thing, I think, on the topic of bike racks. So in this view, you see in the upper left, there's some bike racks which appear to be perpendicular to the flow of traffic on the sidewalk. And I think that they're actually even overlapping with the sidewalk. So I'm not sure if that works, if that location works. You might have to turn them parallel to the sidewalk so the bike And if there's a bike trailer attached to the bike, it's not sticking out into the sidewalk. I think you could even pull, if you turn them parallel, you're going to get less over there. So you might be able to pull some over in front of that row of Carl Forster feather reeds, which play nicely off of the end of the building. So there's that linear planter on the angle at the end, and you might be able to sneak a few more bike racks within that space as well to help balance your quantity. Let's see, I think that covers everything for me. And so I was just going to end with a question of what exactly is that decorative paving? I know you showed a picture. It looked like maybe different sandblast textures on concrete, or it may be colored concrete. I wasn't sure. If you could answer that for me, that'd be great.
Yeah, it is stained concrete, which would have which could have a series of either like an exposed aggregate or an admixture to create some different patterns, and we would do a scoring pattern on there as well. And
keeping it kind of in the charcoal or gray tone family.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, thanks. That's it for me for now.
All right. Let's see. We have Alder Abbas and then Rafiq.
Thank you very much. One comment and one question. Comment is I really like the design as it looks. And the question is about the letter we got from Neighborhood Association. They mentioned about rooftop elements like HVAC system and solar panels and mechanical fixtures. I know you mentioned you address some of the concerns, so I'm curious if this concern about rooftop elements was also discussed or it is resolved or not.
Sure. I'll take that one, and if Nate has other comments he can add. But we have some preliminary layouts from our mechanical engineers, and we have a very efficient VRF system, which is not typical for a hotel. It's not PTAC units. These are very efficient, energy efficient units, but each of those VRF units need a condenser element. And so there are just as many hotel rooms, there are condenser units. There's basically a farm of condenser units that have to be placed up on the roof level for this, in addition to the fresh air makeup units and other equipment that needs to go up on the roof. Our team has done a study to see if solar is an option for that up there, and just the limited amount of area that we could put it really has a really long extended payback period on it. It is something we are studying, and we can continue to study though.
Okay. You are going to have considerable amount of rooftop equipment up there, and it'll probably be a good idea to have a roof plan that shows the bounds or the confines of a roof screen element to kind of harness all them in there versus trying to screen them individually. Okay, Rafiq and then Lois.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Something that the presenter said about the materials and the patterns on the metal panel. He said that they come in different options or whatever. You guys were working towards that. Is this not the final design of those patterns?
It's a representation of the final design. The image on the right is an example of it, and we can provide some more imagery of it. If you go to the next page, that's a snip there of a project that we did a similar approach on. And so each of those panels come together. They're about a foot tall, or a foot in width, and they come in various length, or pretty long lengths. And some of them are entirely kind of positive and flat, and some of them have ridges that are about 2 inches or so, and that are corrugated, and some have kind of more channel looks. And so when you stack them together, you get this. You can play with the pattern within that. So what's on the renderings is a representation, and what's on the photo here on the lower right image is actually what it would look like. And that image there would probably be about 10 to 12 feet tall of paneling.
Hey, I got muted. So that's a huge portion of the building. So I like the project, but I like it because of what I'm looking at. And if you're telling me that could potentially be drastically different, then that makes me hesitate. Because those patterns can make or break the building with so much of that area being composed of that striated or revealed metal panel. So how do we know what we're looking at, we're going to get, or how do we know what we're going to get is what we're going to like?
I would say the rendering is a very good representation of those metal panels. I guess if it's panel A or panel B or panel C between there, you're probably not going to notice a difference. But what the rendering, I think, is a pretty good representation of that material.
So is there a way to make the rendering be accurate and say like what we see is what we're going to get?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say it's pretty close.
Yeah, that's all I had, Cliff.
Okay. Janine, could you unmute Nate Gundrum? I think he accidentally got muted and he might have a comment to add on one of the questions.
Thanks, Aaron. I think you covered the VRF topic, so I was just going to chime in on that, but I think we're good.
All right. Lois, and before I unmute you, Lois, I guess we should look through the full package and see if there is a detailed elevation of the metal panel versus just the rendering, because certainly I agree with Rafiq that we want a certain representation of what that panel spacing is going to be. Go ahead, Lois.
All right. I think this is a vast improvement to the last presentation, so thank you. I think you really listened to our comments, and it's a handsome looking building. My concern is that it's too much metal panel particularly for this location, but also I think I really like the front facade where the metal panel is kind of off the ground. It's a lighter material and it can be suspended, right? But then as we come around and we have that mass, you have the reveal with the windows beyond. I'm looking at the northwest elevation right there, if that's good. That massing where you have the signage, I'm wondering if that massing on both ends of the building would be more appropriately some form of masonry. And I'm not necessarily suggesting it's the dark granite that you have shown. Maybe it's more of a white brick or a light, tone, but something a little less, I guess, to break up that metallic look, and then also to kind of have this solid massing that kind of goes to the ground to help offset all of that metal on the facade. And I realize it comes around the corner and then starts up with the metal again, and maybe there's a transition point, but I'm wondering if you've considered that.
Yeah, we absolutely did consider it. Masonry would be, in some ways, kind of a nice contrast to that, if you will. However, the construction type for the building is a concrete podium only to the second floor line. And from there on up, it's a metal stud, entirely metal stud structure. So it's really not practical for us to put masonry 9 stories in the air on a metal stud building like this. It's something we did look at, but with the construction type going the way it is, it's not really practical for us.
I just feel like it's a lot of metal. I think it would be much more special, and then also kind of give you these kind of anchors at the ends. I think it's too much metal panel. As much as I like it, it's kind of like I think it would have more specialness to it if it was just kind of limited to that curved area at the front and then kind of came around.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Are there any other materials that you've looked at for that other than masonry?
Really, we've been looking at lightweight material. Fiber cement was one of the options we did look at one point.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, next up is Rafiq and then Christian.
Yeah, I just want to kind of follow up with what Lois was saying. I personally don't think every building needs to have brick on it. So I don't know that brick is the answer, but, and I like this the way it is, but I do understand what she's saying. And if that, and so I guess my question is more to Lois as well. Do you think it's the metal panel or just the same metal panel? What if it was just a different color and texture?
Hold on, Lois, I have to unmute you. Go ahead.
Thank you. And maybe that's it. I mean, I think it could be another less striated or less textural material. Although I almost hate to say that because, you know, one thing I do like about masonry is it does have its own texture to it. I just kind of wanted something a little more solid and possibly a little bit more in contrast to that corrugated metal.
Yeah, maybe if Janine could pull up the final slide. I think we saw a preview of it at the very end. So this is something that we offered to the neighborhood meeting to address their concerns. On the upper left of the image is the existing elevations that are in your packet. That's what's submitted. And the option one on the right-hand side of there is we looked at introducing the option of adding some vertical lights set within the facade to kind of activate that wall, do something a little bit different with that. However, we looked at kind of option two in the lower left corner, where it's a similar expression as the existing or proposed, but then that white metal panel is pulled over and that dark metal panel that's on the back side of the building, if you will, is pulled around, and we could set the lighting within that. So that's one way we can definitely break that down. And a kind of a further option of that is the addition of a little bit more of the darker metal panel and one more strip of windows on the kind of concave facade facing Doty and Wilson streets. So this is one way that we were looking at that. We think it's important to have the white, the metal panel on there. It unites the two masses, but we think that there's an option here to pull that back a little bit. This was a late addition to your packet, so you might not have even seen this yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. I think I'm not crazy about that inset. You know, it would be one thing if that whole form was one material, and it was a different material, but you're kind of framing a different material, right? You're framing the dark material. So I'm not crazy about that. I think it makes it needlessly busy.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm not opposed to the keeping it the way it is and then trying to add some kind of decorative lighting pattern, or, you know, I'm not sure what that looks like, and I'm not sure what the relevance of what you have there is to the rest of the building.
Anything else before we turn it over to Christian.
No, that's all I have. But yeah, don't do option 2 and 3. Don't do that.
Right. I agree with you, Rafi.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll unmute you, Christian.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up because this was something I brought up in the first meeting we had with you in terms of breaking up that big expanse of wall with something, and tossed out the idea that maybe lighting as opposed to actual architectural elements. So of these, I think I agree with the others that option 2 and 3 get to be a bit much in changing from one material to another. But option 1, or at least the idea there, I don't know exactly, and I guess I would want more details on how exactly those lighting patterns would work. What type of lights, and are they inset, and et cetera, et cetera. But I think you got the right idea of breaking up that mass. I kind of like that material. This is one of the downfalls of having a Zoom meeting. I want to see, I want to touch, I want to hold that metal panel. I think I have a pretty good feel for what it's going to look like, but I'd like to see it and touch it in person, but that's kind of a moot point. But, and I wonder, especially the fact that it's basically a lighter color, Ascot white, I think it was called. And I wonder if you have any experience of how does this look in like changing daylight conditions? If it's, if there's a sunset happening, is it picking up the glow of that? And I had questions before you brought up this page as, is there interesting things to be done with this building as a whole from exterior lighting options? So, I would be on board for anything that broke up that space with light. I like I say, I think option 1 is more or less the right idea. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, Jessica. No, I'm sorry, Shane was up first, and then Jessica, you're on deck.
Hey, thanks. So I just wanted to respond to some of the comments because especially the comments about changing materiality, and I think what I see in the renderings I like, and there's a good balance of simplicity and textures without it getting too busy. So I worry that if one side becomes a different material, it just becomes more complex and more busy than it needs to be. I actually think there's kind of a nice breakdown in the materials as it is right now. I think it's important to scrutinize the metal panel as a material in this amount of quantity, and in that I defer to some of the others on the call. But I'd be very hesitant to introducing a different material or another texture or complicating that elevation. Regarding the light options that you provided, I agree with everything else people said. Option 1, the staggering of the lights, I'm not sure if I buy that. Again, I feel like it creates more complexity than what's really needed. Because I don't know how wide that piece of metal is right there, but it doesn't seem like it's that wide. And maybe if those lights do make their way into the final design, maybe it's just a simplified linear arrangement without the staggering. So just a couple of thoughts. I think there is enough complexity already going on, just to summarize my sentiments.
Okay, thank you. Jessica.
Yeah, I wanted to follow along with the idea of the design. I wanted to just remind us all that this is primo real estate, and this is a pretty unique building occupancy on that real estate. With a hotel, you're not limited to what a federal building needs or office building and so on. So I'd like to be really excited about this for Madison, and I'd like it. I would hope that it would be a showcase. And the curve was such a great bold move. And I see that there's a lot of care been put into the detail and a lot of thought about the materials. I just wonder if it's a little safe when it could be, I don't know, something really pretty unique. Primo real estate again, and then the building type, a hotel. There's no definition really on what a hotel has to look like. So my sense on these are when I look at the Wilson Street view, the curve, there's a curve there, but I still feel like it's really fighting with the windows, the size of them, the proportion of them, and the verticality of those panels. And when you have some very nice details, I believe, like how that glazing is inset and then surrounded kind of by a dark frame. I almost wish that frame was even more exaggerated, like really pop out these features. Everything seems very nice, and nice is wonderful, but awesome could be even better. And I wonder if boosting up some of the details, maybe deepening things like overhangs might add to that a little bit. That's it.
Thank you. I guess before I see any more hands raised, I do have a question for the designer, and that is when I look at the floor plans at the corner rooms, I see desks or some furniture up against the walls, and on this rendering I see floor to ceiling glass, and I'm just wondering how that gets resolved in the design, in the final design, so that we're not looking at the back of furniture with wires and stuff for lamps coming up.
A lot of times these hotels will have curtains and sheers and draperies that will be, floor to ceiling in there. And I think the desks would probably have, more delicate legs rather than panels on them. And that's just a preliminary furniture layout. With the interior designer, it's possible that desk could move over to the other area on that corner king room too, and a chair or something could be put in that position. So that's good feedback though, but in no case you're not suggesting that there would be any spandrel glass there, right? Correct. It's all vision.
Okay. All right. I see that Alder Verveer has asked to speak. Craig, I will unmute Alder Verveer and then we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Cliff. I actually wouldn't mind at all if Craig went ahead of me.
Okay. Craig, it's all yours.
All right. Thank you very much. So I want to turn our attention to the other side of the building. The site plans and the elevations don't really address what's happening on the back side. I understand there's back of house, other things going on. Could you talk through what that is and then what that will look like in possible different phases if the future building is not there?
Sure. In the elevation here, the lower left elevation, where the gray is, that is a masonry. So we'd probably do, I think we're calling out a CMU masonry there. That would be essentially a party well. That's a property line. We can't put any windows in that. And that's where a future building would abut. So the plans call for a 1 to 2 story building that would essentially abut right up against that. The elevation beyond that in plan varies between probably about 7 feet to 15 to 20 feet at the outer corners because of the curved nature of that facade. But there is, a pattern of guest room windows within that look out into that space. There will, on that lower roof, there will be some mechanical equipment that needs to serve the public spaces. And we do plan on screening that from the street.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Alder Verveer, you're up.
Well, thank you, Janine. I was waiting for Cliff to call on me again. Is
okay.
it my turn, Cliff?
Yep, it sure is.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Cliff, and thank you, and good evening, commissioners. I very seldom choose to testify at your commission meetings, and I want to explain that for a moment. And that is absolutely, unequivocally not because I don't respect the critical role that UDC plays in our land use process. It's quite the contrary. I don't know if you commissioners hear it often enough, in fact, and I hope Syed at least hears it from our fellow council colleagues, but I can't thank all of you enough for the critical role that you each play in your service to our community. The longtime members of the commission know that I am a regular attendee of your meetings, and I know some of you might have thought it is to enjoy former Chair Dick Wagner's baked goods. I assure you that wasn't the primary rationale. It was because the conversations you have are invaluable to me in my role as an alder. So pre-pandemic, I would always attempt to attend your meetings in person. It's a lot more convenient now that City Channel covers your meetings during this pandemic because I don't necessarily have to join you live. I can always watch the meetings after the fact, which has been a blessing. And then, of course, Janine's reports are always invaluable to us at the council and, of course, to the Plan Commission. So I want to talk to you mostly about process tonight. Unfortunately, none of my constituents were able to join the meeting tonight. As I had hoped they would be able to, specifically the neighborhood activists that volunteer to serve on the Neighborhood Association, a steering committee for Judge Doyle Square. I want to recognize absolutely the significant design progression that you saw since last year in the informational presentation. And also since the Neighborhood Steering Committee saw the initial designs in the one and only meeting that they had. Nate made a very unintentional error when he said that the steering committee had met or the neighborhood had met twice with the development team. Unfortunately, the Capital Neighborhoods Inc., which is of course the recognized Downtown Neighborhood Association steering committee, only had the opportunity to meet once with the development team, and that was back on November 2nd. This is in no way because the development team was dragging their feet or refusing to meet with the neighborhood association. It simply is a matter of, I think, the holidays getting in the way and the fact that the neighborhood activists have had experienced such a tremendous number of false starts with the project known as Judge Doyle Square, as we all have over its, I hate to admit it, but very long tortured history. As a reminder that this PD, GDP, SIP that you're being asked to alter was originally adopted by the Common Council back in 2017. So just on Block 105 alone, that side of South Pinckney Street, we have had a long history, obviously within City Hall, but certainly for the neighborhood association as well. With that said, the written statement that was submitted to the commission stands. I did receive communication from the president of Capital Neighborhoods, Inc., Eli Judge, a few hours ago. And I don't know that I need to read it in large part, but if I could, so I don't make an error, let me just read perhaps 2 sentences from it. And it says, the impressions I've received have been near universally in favor of keeping our previous communication to UDC as is. I have conveyed to the developer that we will not be making any substantive amendments to our UDC communication prior to tonight's meeting. And again, this is after Nate and Eli had a chance to speak telephonically today, and after Nate and JP Beitler and I had a 1-hour conversation last night that included communicating to me those 3 additional options to solve the dilemma with the end caps on the proposed building. I want to say, although I hesitate to speak to design issues because you are the design professionals, I am absolutely nothing close to a design professional, even an amateur one. But I want to acknowledge that the concern that you raised in your informational session comments late last year were absolutely on point when you identified that the end caps are too blank due to the stair towers placed there. It's a dilemma that we face all the time with buildings proposed downtown, and it's one that we're able to solve, I think, quite well. And I again appreciate the design progression here and the fact that the development team had those 3 additional options and that they were able to share those with you tonight. Well, those 3 options were shared with the Neighborhood Association Steering Committee via email last night, and even with those representations, the steering committee via email conversation asked that this matter respectfully be referred tonight by the commission. They do so with the full knowledge that feedback would be garnered tonight, very valuable feedback would be garnered tonight. In my conversation with the applicant last night, I endeavored to convince them to treat this more as a second informational, or at the very least to only ask for initial. Obviously, they chose otherwise in their introductory comments to you, requesting initial final tonight. I absolutely respect and understand their perspective, as their rationale is that they are in significant need of a financing commitment sooner rather than later. Financing is not yet in hand, and they want to be able to demonstrate to that sector the availability that zoning approvals have progressed. I respect that rationale very much and appreciate their predicament. With that said, I have to respect my constituents, the Neighborhood Association, particularly since none of them were able to be here in person with you tonight, and respectfully ask again that the commission consider referral to your next meeting. That would allow time for the steering committee of the Neighborhood Association to meet once more with the development team prior to UDC making at least a final, what could be a final decision with initial final before this item is scheduled to go to the Plan Commission. As a reminder, Janine mentioned at the top of your meeting that this major alteration to the plan development is scheduled to go to the Plan Commission on I believe February 8th. Your next meeting is February 10th of UDC. It seems to me that if this matter was referred to your next immediate meeting on February 10th, that this applicant could then go to the Plan Commission meeting on February 22nd and still keep their same calendar of Common Council consideration of the major alteration on the night of Tuesday, February 23rd, and not delay their end date of their entitlement process, at least before public bodies. Obviously, staff sign off is another whole story. But so with that said, I don't ask for this very often. In fact, most of the time I don't take the opportunity to testify because, again, I appreciate the critical work you all play as design professionals, and I hesitate to ever comment on design, at least at your meetings. So again, I only come to you with that process request and want to reiterate and remind you of that written communication from Capital Neighborhoods. Thank you very much. And I'd certainly be happy to try to answer any questions if there are any.
I do have a question. And this is regarding the process and the letter. It appears as though the end caps and the blank walls is a significant portion of the request to refer, and you heard that there's also concern here by our commissioners. But do you think that that precludes an initial approval? With the applicant then having to come back with those elements and get them worked out for final?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Cliff. And I know that the applicants were planned to consult with Kevin Furco and Janine today. But by the way, it occurred to me that when I said that Nate misspoke about how often the development team has met with the neighborhood, I should hasten to add that indeed they also participated in a publicly noticed neighborhood meeting that was expertly facilitated on Zoom by Kevin Furco on January 14th, so earlier this month. But that did not have the opportunity for the handful of neighborhood volunteers to talk on a one-on-one basis with the development team, which is what steering committees are all about at the neighborhood level. To answer your question, Cliff, that's as I say, is a good one. I encouraged the development team in our conversation last night to at least only request initial. I told them that with initial, but they were going to confirm with Kevin and Janine today that then they would still be able to stick to their plan commission scheduled date of February 8th as per past practice. So I can appreciate that. I will say, and I'm pulling up another email from a long time downtown neighborhood activist who was well versed in your practices and has testified many times before you. I won't mention his name since I don't have permission to do so. But he says here, in part, the major areas of concern to the neighborhood are items typically included under initial approval. The final approval typically only deals with specifics on materials and colors, the placement on the site, the bulk mass and design, the street level facades, loading considerations are all part of an initial approval. I am of the opinion, based on my prior comments, that referral is a proper approach. The timeline they have provided indicates construction not starting until 2022. Again, that last statement, it might not be accurate. Again, I think if financing is secured, construction would start well before next year. So take that last sentence with a grain of salt. But to your point, I absolutely think, Cliff, that initial would be a lot easier pill to swallow, so to speak, for the neighborhood association than if final approval was granted tonight by the commission. And I think the commissioners have given a rationale otherwise before I had a chance to testify as to a reason for the applicant to come back.
Well, and as their representative, it sounds like you and the commission have the same understanding through their letter, is that what the big objections or I should say concerns are for the project. They're not substantial with regard to entrances, the height of the building, the form of the curve, or anything like that. It's mostly kind of skin deep, right?
I think that's a fair representation. Yes, as Syed pointed out in his question, the written communication you have to the commissioners specifically speaks to the rooftop. There certainly was a large interest in sustainability features articulated at that neighborhood meeting that Kevin Furco facilitated a week and a half or so ago. And so there was a strong desire for solar, for example, green roof, that sort of thing. So what the rooftop will look like, what the mechanicals will look like, the elevator overrun, any sort of mechanical penthouse is part of their concern. Loading, is another concern, and as well. I do want to again reiterate. I'm sorry if I'm being overly repetitive, but reiterate that this certainly is significant progression of the design since the informational last year. So I don't want that to be seen as insulting. Aaron and the others at Kaler Slater and the development team for hearing you in hearing, the neighborhood in the previous meeting that they were able to have. So there has been improvement. I certainly will understand if initial is your approval motion tonight. But again, the neighborhood is asking for referral, obviously.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions for the alder while he's unmuted? Okay. No. Thank you very much for your help and your representation of the capital neighborhoods tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you again.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Any motion, I think, whether it's for initial or for referral, we really should be, very specific about what it is we expect from the development team. Let's see, or conditional approval for that matter. Tom.
Yeah, thanks, Cliff. I was going based on my understanding of the fact that the basic massing and size and site location, et cetera, is approved by, or is that we're okay with it. I was going to move initial with these conditions, that we get a final detail of the end walls, leaning towards option 1, perhaps with some lighting, and a sort of a blow up. I don't know how to present this, but a final and more detailed rendering of the exact metal sheathing, the striated metal, per Rafiq's comments. I agree. That's a lot of metal. We need to see exactly what it's going to look like. So the end wall and the metal sheathing, the roof mechanicals is the screening is an important detail, and maybe other components of the roof if there's anything, sustainability or green or solar, whatever's going to happen on the roof, we need to see full detail. And then Shane's comments about the planters on Pinckney, the bike racks on Doty, the one little lone planter with the 2 plants in it, but just perhaps a change or a refinement of the detail on those. Those are the conditions that I think I heard mostly from people. If there's something else, I'll entertain additional.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion before we open it up for discussion? Craig, is that a second? Okay. So the motion has been seconded. Is there any discussion now on the motion? Okay. See no discussion on the motion. Going once, going twice. Okay, then by unanimous consent, we have initial approval, and we look forward to seeing you back with additional detail as mentioned in the motion. Thank you. Okay, that takes us to the hill. The Green Hill.
The team members registered to speak for this item include Allison Rathsack, Betsy Powers, and Christopher Sina, with John Welch available to answer questions.
And I'm just wondering, Tom and Christian, if you just maybe should we just kick it off with your questions?
I'm comfortable.
Okay, if that's okay with the applicant.
Yeah, rather than the whole. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So mine was. I don't know if you can flip to the slide that shows the pyramid. I just maybe didn't understand it, but okay. So well, I mean, this is okay in plan view. But my question simply is: there was one graphic that showed the completed hill ending in a point. And yeah, okay, that puppy. And I just wanted to know if that's the final intended grade or not. Or that's my question.
Yeah. So
go ahead, Allie.
Sorry, this is Allison Rathsack. I'm with the Department of Waste and Renewables. It is currently designed to maximize the amount of approved airspace. With that being said, the top 15 feet or so doesn't add that much volume. So we are receptive to lowering the height to soften the peak as a condition of approval.
Okay, thank you. I would suggest doing so.
Am I up? Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
So I read the page that sort of assessed the current plantings and the proposed ones going forward, and it looked like it was well thought out by Saiki Design as far as using the combination of different types of plants and their eventual height in combination with the topography to maximize the blockage of views of the landfill. But in going over the survey of the plantings from several years back that went into the how well they had done, I noticed that the crab apples, almost all of them seem to be in either poor or bad conditions, which doesn't really surprise me. They're not particularly long-lived trees, and without routine care and pruning, at least on every couple of year basis, they tend to go downhill fairly fast. But given that, I saw that there was quite a few crabs proposed going forward, and I just wondered if anybody from the LA firm was there to address, why we're putting flowering crabs, as nice as I'm sure they would look there, when the previous plantings of them have all fallen into a rather sad state.
Yeah, this is Chris from Psyche. I can speak to that. Including the crabs was largely just a function of working within the existing plant palette. But knowing that crabs are not the longest lived species, certainly in this situation, sort of under the assumption that as the other things fill in, these crabs, maybe it would be okay if they sort of faded away as the other species matured and perhaps filled in. In some areas we have a few plants that might colonize a bit more, like the gray dogwood and the quaking aspen. So it'll be a pretty dynamic planting over time. That being said, we'd certainly have no issues whatsoever with finding a substitute for the crab apples, something that can maybe naturalize a bit better or be a bit more long-lived.
Okay, I'm not saying it's a non-starter for me to have them. I just, I'm concerned that, that there might not be something that the funds would be better spent on. But, I could also see where, as a placeholder for a while, that they might be acceptable. It just seemed rather stark looking at the history of the previous ones, why we would, duplicate them. But I'll defer to your choices.
Would you like to memorialize that in the form of a motion?
Are they asking for final approval on this, or are we giving some type of advisory opinion?
This is final approval according to our agenda. The request is,
well, I would make a motion. I would make a motion for final with concerns given for a more rounded, natural top of the peak of the landfill, and perhaps at least consideration of possible changes for the flowering crabs.
Okay, is there a second on the motion? Tom? Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay. Craig, hold on, unmute. Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask staff, is there any more detail needed as far as elevation wise of rounding the top, just making sure we're giving you enough direction there? Or is there like a certain elevation you want, or is enough to work with the applicant with that information? Okay.
This is Janine. I think maybe a clarification from the development team, maybe Allison. I'm looking at this map and I see 1070 as one of the top grade lines. Where would that peak be able to be leveled off?
Or even slide 17 shows a nice cross cut, I think, as well, which might be easier to see on the eyes as well, where it looks like it's almost 20 feet down from 1080 to 1060.
Allison or Betsy?
Yeah, this is Betsy Powers with SCS Engineers. We're working with the county on the design and permitting of the landfill. There's certainly flexibility with at what elevation we start to kind of flatten that off a bit. And certainly, as Allie mentioned, for the state, the DNR permitting, we're just looking to get the maximum capacity we can. In reality, even if we left it designed that way, there's no way it could be constructed to a sharp peak like that. So it would never actually look like that, even if we didn't modify the grades. But of course, we're certainly open to modifying those a bit. We could, I guess I'd like to talk to the county about how far they'd like to go. At what elevation they might want to start that transition at, but there's certainly flexibility on where we start that.
Jane?
Yeah, and I know that we had some previous discussions, but right around 10 to 15 feet, we probably could lower that.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Shane.
So, question for us on the motion. Are we assuming that this request on the peak isn't changing capacity of the landfill?
Does a little, is my understanding, but modest. Correct?
Well, I guess if it's 10 feet at that very, very small little triangle there, it's
one trash can full.
Okay. I'll do some more composting.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a seconded motion, and we've had some discussion and a little bit of clarification on that. See no additional hands raised, then by unanimous consent, we have final approval with those comments and conditions. Thank you. And that takes us to the last item, number 6, a revisit of 6003, 6067 Gemini Drive.
The development team registered to speak on this item includes Mark Ott and Brian Munson.
Are you going to kick us off, Brian?
Yeah, I would be happy to.
Okay.
Good evening. Janine, if you could pull up the plan set and go to page 10.
You're going to tell me what slide that is.
There's 3 files. Let's hear. Okay, yeah, no, keep going. Maybe 4 or 5 more slides. When we get to the perspectives. Keep going. 2 more, I think. One more. Sorry. So, actually, one more slide from there, and then I'll kick things off. So thanks for taking the time this evening. This packet really is a summary of a lot of minor moving parts, but as we talked with staff, we wanted to make sure that we were trying to work through the approval process and get it all in one packet that reflected all of the changes. So tonight, we're here to talk about a minor amendment to the approved plan unit development for this project. And really, a lot of these are kind of design evolutions as we got into the details of some of these components. And they kind of span into 3 categories. The first one was really commercial enhancements. And you can see most of the changes on this slide have to do with looking at windows, changing the scale of the wall next to the sidewalk to help break it down a little bit, and then expanding the outdoor dining area. The next category were some changes in terms of constructability, so adjustments as we got into the structural design of the building. Things like where we had windows adjacent to some storage areas, the porches, some ramp and access changes that reflect building code and also existing easements. And then the third was really material availability and some design refinement on the materials. And with those, we tried to hone as closely as possible to the approved palette with some manufacturer substitutions that closely align with the previous details of the building. So since there's a whole lot of kind of little details scattered throughout the site, as I said, we've reached out with staff, had conversations with Alder Lemmer about this project, and she has offered her support for the changes. But tonight, rather than kind of walk through every single one of them, which we'd be happy to do, we thought it would be better simply to throw it open for questions, and then we can answer clarifications on anything that you might have that's proposed within the packet. As mentioned, of course, Mark Ott is here with JLA Architects, and he can walk you through things or answer questions, whichever you would like. We also have Dan Brinkman available to answer questions from the developer side. So in an effort to keep things short and sweet, we'd be happy to answer questions or any comments that you might have on the proposed amendments.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commissioners? Tom.
Thank you. Brian, if you could bring up a picture of one of the end walls where you've reduced the deck size and pulled it back so we can see the top of the building. The detail up there has changed. I'd just like to take a look at it and see what other commissioners, if they had any reaction.
Sure.
To that. So,
Janine, if you could go forward 2 more slides. Here's a good example.
Okay, so that's the original.
That was the original, and then the next slide is proposed. And Mark, do you want to answer the question or the details as to how those changes have been done?
Yep, and so if you want to make sure everybody can hear me, it looks like you can based on the note on screen. So to address that, obviously, if we look at the very top of the building where we had the roof element and overhang, if you will, obviously, one slide back has the original. Yep, it's up there. This slide has the new, and you can see that we pulled it back. And so again, here, this is one of those constructability scenarios that we ran into. And as we worked with our structural engineers and worked on, okay, well, we've basically got a deck and a roof kind of cantilevered out in 2 different directions. That's really struggling to, at the depth that we had that to make it work. When we compiled in some of the other building code things that we had to work through, we really ran into kind of a few options and kind of went through them. One, to stay with the original size of both the decks and the overhang would be put a column, out at the corner of that and work that down through. Or 2, have some cable tie, which is very, common these days, if you will. And in both those, as we looked at those, we thought that really changed the architecture much more than simply pulling this back a couple feet with the roof and about 1.5 feet for the decks, for example. So we got those within a dimension that could be worked to still maintain that kind of open cantilevered corner that the original approval looked for. And so really it's a dimensional change, but as we looked at it, to us, it seemed like the most minor change, even though it's a dimension. than something more drastic that would really change the architecture. So that's the genesis of how we came to what we're presenting tonight.
Okay, my question would be that the very top overhang, and I would really defer to the architects on the commission, whether would that be more elegant, looking more like it did in the original where it was a straight line across as opposed to this current zig. Yeah, okay, it doesn't go all the way across, but where it didn't do the zigzag around the projection, but could it be squared off? Would it look better squared off, or is this fine with folks? I just had that. It struck me. I didn't love it, so I was just asking if others had a reaction to it.
Well, Tom, before I unmute Lois, I'd give you my opinion. I think that the center bay, I think would be more successful without any horizontal elements
at all,
either engaging it like the balconies or the overhang or the big band in the middle. I'm thinking just making it a bay and having things just die into it or return back into it. I don't know what you think, Lois. I'll unmute you.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Okay.
That was my only comment. Thank you.
So that takes care of that particular one. I would imagine that would be a relatively simple thing to do. It's more deductive than asking you to add materials.
Yeah, and just to be clear, and I'm sure it'll come up in the motion, Cliff, just so we're clear, I absolutely understand the very top of it, what you're saying. Are you talking about the one that's basically, at the middle of that center bay as well, or just the roof band?
The middle one, the roof band, and even having those balconies, kind of extend overlapping over it instead of just, passing. I don't have a detail of it, of course, but, not having that try to return back into that side like that, just pass by it parallel. Okay. Any other questions? What's that?
Can staff make a request?
Please.
Maybe the development team is going to get to this, but one of the concerns from the planning division and the director were the material changes. And I was wondering if the commission had any questions or if the development team could speak to that a little bit more.
Well, I certainly have a concern about going to a thin stone that's adhered versus a more of a 4-inch dimensional stone that's laid up like brick. And my concern is that it has to be a material that engages door openings and window openings and jams and things like that, and how that turns a corner and really looks like a stone veneer versus just a stuck on tile at the corners and everything else. We don't have those details, and I think in my mind I would want to see those details to be sure that it's the wise move. And with regard to the siding, since the texture, color, and exposure are pretty much the same, I can't say I would have any objections to the siding. I don't know if anybody else has any other thoughts on the material changes.
Cliff, could Mark explain a little bit more on the application with the stone?
Sure.
Yeah, and so Cliff, absolutely everything you're saying, I understand what you're talking about and where that's coming from. The one thing we wanted to make sure that everybody understood on this, and I think obviously looking at these pictures and flipping back and forth and comparing it, is in the one case here, we are using actual real stone. So neither the original nor obviously the new proposed is cultured, which is what we call fake stone. This is actual real stone, and it's the exact same product that we were approved originally at, and obviously and now we're using it. The company just makes it in a thin, right? So they basically slice it. And so you're using the real same material. So obviously the depth is different. And one of the things of why we thought we could still be very successful in using the thin stone in this case where maybe is going, if we had picked something else, is that as you see on the slide here, this is a random, pattern stone. It's not a brick. It's not so it's actually, it's got kind of an artistic layup, standpoint where the mason has to artistically kind of piece all this together. And not only does it have that in its size and shape, and you can't really quite get it from this picture, but it has that in its face. So again, if we were to compare it to a thin brick where literally every brick is, exactly the same size, both left and right and up and down, but also in thickness, you get a very flat plane. With the stone that we picked here, you actually have variation in depth of the stone. The manufacturer might say it's, an inch per se or more, but you really get that variation. And then as you can see on here too, both in depth and then the texture. So that's where we thought that this was a good product to pitch, to bring forward as a thin stone. As far as the detailings go, again, the corners, and we didn't have any pictures of that, unfortunately. But in this case, again, we're not using a cultured stone that would have a pre-manufactured corner. So really the corners are still going to be done really the same, whether this was thin veneer or full depth bed, where, they're going to be, pieced together. The mason's actually going to, interlace, the one coming from one direction with the one coming the other direction. So the corners will still look the same as if it was full, you shouldn't know it at the corners. Of course, the shadow lines at the windows and doors will be a little thinner. We're still going to use masonry sills and those types of details. So that's about, I guess what I could offer up for the detailing of it.
Okay, but on the outside corner where a full dimensional stone would have a 4-inch return before the next one met it, you're going to see a little potato chip thickness of stone, and then it's going to turn. I mean, they don't, unless they make, I appreciate that it's real stone, but I don't know that they make a corner unit that actually turns and gives it that appearance of a dimensional stone thickness.
I understand what you're saying, and I don't have that information in front of me, but I'm making a note to track that down.
Yeah, because especially since it's so rough, and it's coursing, just what that's going to look like at those corners and the jambs would be a concern.
Sure, I know what you're saying.
Any other questions or comments with regard to the material changes? There was also the request for more patio space, I believe, and some adjustments for storefront openings.
Yeah, to explain the patio a little bit, this is an area that was always had parking underneath it. In the original proposal, it had landscaping and a smaller patio space. But as we've learned, of course, in COVID times about the value of outdoor seating, we don't see that changing in the future, hopefully post-COVID. So we saw this as an opportunity to really expand the patio space out to the area that is above the parking. And then what we did is we took the landscaping and compressed it rather than reduce the number of plants. We've actually, just distributed it differently. The other thing it allowed us to do is to pull the trash enclosure, which was previously outbound from the building, tighter to the building, which just gives a better interface between the patio and the green space between the buildings.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that it could invite more activity on the outside of the building, and that might be a good thing. Okay, any other questions with regard to any of the requested changes? It was quite a bit. Brian summarized it, but all the details are in the submittal materials that we received. Lois?
Well, I'm not sure. Could we do a final approval with the detailing? Just, to be brought to you, Cliff, or do we need to have this come back?
Well, yeah, I mean, typically it would be maybe something staff could approve, but individual commissioners really aren't in a position to make decisions unilaterally. So but certainly, we can entertain a motion to set some conditions on materials or any other details that we wanted more information on, or we could refer certain portions of this to come back.
Well, I guess I'd make a motion for approval with the conditions of the comments on the overhangs, the acceptability of the material as far as the appearance of the stone and the siding, the acceptable patio size, and other changes, and then just have the stone detail at the returns be administratively reviewed, as far as to make sure that we're not seeing a thin kind of false stone potato chip, as Cliff put it. Maybe somehow detailed so we have a little bit more of a sense of a full piece of stone there.
Okay. I know you had your hand raised, Shane, but before we do that, I'm gonna ask for a second on the motion. Seconded. Okay. Now the motion's been seconded. Can we, or is there any discussion on the motion?
Well, I'll just add, maybe it just adds confidence to our motion, but I can say from firsthand experience, typically that thin veneer does have a corner product that it's paired with. So I can't say it with 100% certainty of that specific product, but usually there is a corner that comes with it. So I think that just goes into support with your motion, Lois.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments? Discussion on the motion, I should say. Okay. So that is for final, with some more information coming back to staff. Okay, seeing no additional hands raised, then final approval is granted conditionally as we just approved it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, committee. Have a good night.
Okay. Any business by members, since it's practically still the afternoon? I'm wondering, maybe Stefan, if you could just unmute everybody. Alder Abbas. Wait a second.
In fact, that's great. Thank you. One quick update. Alder Evers and me, both of us are working with the mayor office, and we both are looking into, as a team, looking into ordinance change. We are looking into various sustainability measures, not only changing, making tweaks in the ordinance, but kind of like looking into incentives for the building design, building emission. So it might take almost a year or more to create the program or design after comprehensive feedback from commissions and as well as business community and other stakeholders. So probably might be not in next 2 or 3 months, but might be close to end of summer. We might bring mayor office, somebody from mayor office might come here for a presentation and get feedback from you all as well, because a lot of us have expertise in building design, and it's good for us to get some feedback from the commission too. So just wanted to give you that feedback. The work is started already.
Great. Thank you for doing that. It would certainly give the various commissions and even staff more certainty as to what we can demand and what we can recommend and what we can expect. Rafiq. Oh, hold on. There you go.
Yeah, I had a question and a comment, and the comment is kind of right on time coming after Alder Abbas. I just wanted to remind people that transparency in material does not automatically equal a lack of sustainability. We can have these entertaining and exciting buildings that are not all brick, and I implore us to kind of diversify some of the things that we allow within the ordinances. It's becoming a thing, and I just want to put that out there. But then my question was more to Janine. Do we not get the presentation links anymore?
I did send them, but sounds like you didn't get it. So
I don't think I got them the last 2 times, and I've just been over here. Just like Legistar was doing all kinds of things for me, and I couldn't get some of the things open during the meeting. So I just wanted to know.
Sure, I'll communicate with you after tonight and make sure I've got the right email address.
Okay.
Thank you.
The presentation links still go to Legistar though, right? That's the ones I'm getting are still taking me back to Legistar.
Correct.
Okay.
I had a question for Alder Abbas. And that is, my understanding was that somewhere under the Scott Walker regime, the state set some limitations on how far cities can go in changing ordinances, specifically around building code and sustainability. What is our leeway? How far can we go? And are you getting good legal counsel to push it to the limits?
Yeah, we Attorney Strange is also involved in those discussions. You are absolutely spot on. We cannot really implement aggressive building codes. It's not allowed by the state statute. So, but if we create an incentive program, I'm just giving one example. If we have an incentive program, then we can ask them to, but it's again, but it's again up to developer if he want to go. But this is just one idea. But we are also thinking about. I don't want to discuss in a public forum some of the ideas because they are premature. But we're discussing some other techniques as well to really. Through ordinance base, because ordinance is law, then they have to do something. So if we're not going to touch code, we're going to touch something. And we're just looking legally what options are there. And if you remember, like when I did plastic straw ordinance, the Walker administration put a ban on cities to ban anything. So we are totally banned basically by state law. So what we did is we did plastic straw upon request. So kind of like.
Okay, so you're looking at the workarounds.
So, so there are some possibilities, legal possibilities, but those we have to do our due diligence before we bring in front of public to really make sure it's all ironed out. So, but yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. By the way, I like that pyramid of Egypt.
I was hoping for blue mounds.
Strict adherence to the landscaping plan. We want that pointed, right?
I think we should have definitely demanded that it become razor sharp.
They came with so much excitement. That's a pyramid right there. You guys know.
The garbage.
I mean, we need some more tourism around here. Okay, so we are back on our 2-week schedule, everyone. So we'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Janine and Julie, I believe we're not facing any marathon agendas, at least in the near future. Is that correct?
You are absolutely correct.
All right. Fantastic.
It might be like 2 or 3 on the next one.
Oh, good. Nice.
And one quick thing I will also say, Julie, if you can also upload the minutes before this Urban Design Commission meeting on Registrar, the minutes was not there. We got minutes through email, but it was not uploaded. So if before next meeting, we can double check and make sure those are uploaded, that will be great.
Oh, okay. We don't typically upload them to Legistar until you guys approve them. We don't publish them on Legistar as draft. I can check with somebody in the mayor's office to see if we can do that.
Yeah, could you please check with Attorney Strange and see either it's we can do or not? So
sure.
In case, the reason I'm saying it, in case if some developer have some concern about some reach out to ahead of a time. So just check with it and see if it's possible. Not a big deal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. Okay. Very good. Then by unanimous consent at 6:46, we're adjourned and see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you, Stefan.